Hello, I am Professor Smita Sehgal from Lady Shri Ram College, University of Delhi. In our previous lecture on early Tamilakam, we had focused on sources. These included a discussion of Sangam texts, Ettutugai, Pattapata, Tolikapayam, and the epics Shilapadakaram and Manimekhalai. This lecture is going to be a continuation of that, and we'll also take now into account other sources which we did refer to earlier, like archaeology, coins, epigraphs, material remains, and we are going to focus a little more on them in this particular presentation. We also looked earlier in the locale and expanse of Tamilakam in South India and obviously its geographical topography too. Our focus this time, friends, is definitely going to be on economic, political and social milieu during the same period, what we had covered last time, and that is between the 2nd century BCE and the 3rd and the 6th century CE, a good expanse of almost 800 years. We would like to explore issues related to gender and see what roles did women play in productive patterns of early Tamilakam. But along with that, we'll also take a look at the religious developments in this period. So friends, first let us take a look at the map. Again, I know I have covered it in my last lecture, but it is worth taking a look at it once again. Look at the areas that are covered by what we refer to as Tamilakam and what would be the terrains for poetic compositions of the Sangam and post-Sangam literature. So here we have the Cholas towards north of Tamil Nadu. So it will include South Tamil Nadu, also North Tamil Nadu, South Andhra Pradesh, parts of Karnataka region as well as Kerala, and we see the emergence of the three important dynasties here, the Cholas, the Cheras and the Pandyas. Let us first take a look at what the economic life was like in our period of study. So we look at, of course, the texts and archaeology both, as I had mentioned earlier, and I remember talking in detail about the Sangam corpus earlier. But I just want to emphasize, rather re-emphasize here, that along with Sangam corpus, we would also take foreign texts into account, including the very famous The Periplus that I discussed in the last lecture, and of course, Wenzhang, who is a Chinese traveler, his observations as well. The first area of study is bound to be agriculture, but this would be followed by an understanding of commerce and manufacturing activities. So, what would be included in that? Now, for that, friends, we really need to look at the physiographic divisions. Texts inform us of five-fold physiographic units where the poetic compositions, especially of Akkam poetries, were taking place. These are zones where love seemed to have blossomed. These are referred to as Tinais. Now, the Tinai mentioned in the poetry are in fact a part of the continuum in nature that are interspersed and scattered in the region. The poems provide incidental information about the landscape, and for us, that is historians, this gives us a clue into our probe of the milieu of the time. But what exactly does a Tinai mean? What it meant at that point in time? Well, we can only conjecture it right now. In retrospect, we can assume that the term Tenai was used for a wide range of meanings. This would include space, land, abode, genre, genealogy, and situation also. These may not be comparable, complete set of meanings, but anyway, it gave us a sense of what the word may have been used right from the time of Tolikapayam. Tolikapayam, friends, is the earliest of the Sangam literature or Sangam texts, and even subsequent texts make reference to Tenais very often. From our perspective, Tenais can be taken as microzones of given modes of human adaptation. There were 5 Tenais in total: Kurinji, Neathal, Mullai, Marutham and Pallai. These are actually names of flowers, and I must also apologize if my pronunciation is not perfect. I'm trying to get that, but I may not be very correct in that. Now, historians have for long argued that each of these Tanais had their own distinct forms of economic activity based on soil regime, climatic conditions, rainfall, and availability of other resources in the countryside. So, just to give you an example, the undulating nature of Kurinji made hunting gathering the ideal means of subsistence and was practiced by Veddars and Kuravars inhabiting the highland terrains. So, Kurinji actually refers to the hilly highland terrains. Maravars, Kallars, and other such communities of the arid Pallai. So, Pallai is an arid stretch, were forced to live by plunder, and this is very natural because this is largely a resourceless area and generally unsustainable for a continued livelihood. Third, the inhabitants of the wooded Mulai belts, wooded would be the forest area, they engage themselves in pastoral activities, while the coastal areas of Nethal were best suited for production of fishing products or for pearl diving, for salt making and so on. And the Muradan, or the Murathan as it's called at times, the dwellers in that area, they practiced wetland agriculture, primarily that of cultivation of rice. Now, most of the early chieftaincies and early kingdoms were located in rice producing Muratham tracts, and I'll be talking about it in some detail a little later also. It seems that their Janapads, or the chieftaincies or Janpad-like polities evolved out of tribal organizations. We'll discuss on this a little later when I take up the political formations in the Sangam time. The agricultural potential of the major river valleys attracted settlers from very early times. We know that numerous settlements had emerged by the beginning of the Common Era in and around, say, the Kaveri Delta. It shows a concentration of such settlements. Now, what we have here is a neatly formulated relationship between geography and economy. So, the general assumption was that Tenais were geospecific islets in themselves, almost like, islands by themselves, very isolated areas. But the question that comes to our mind is that were they really isolated entities? Were they not linked with each other by a web of symbiotic relationships of exchange and interactions? Well, till 1970s, Tenais was seen as distinct phases in the evolution of early economic practices. This was the view we find in works of scholars like P.T. Srinivasa Iyengar, Dikshitar, S.K. Iyengar, N. Subramaniam, and so on. In their opinion, each Tennai represented a pattern of economic practice in itself, forming a definite stage in the evolution of Tamil economy. But friends, in the recent years, scholars like Rajan Gurukul have pointed out that it is not possible to map out perceptible limits of Tennais, like little zones. It's not really possible to do that. The Sangam bards visualize the entire topography as a continuum with no manifest boundaries whatsoever between them. In fact, there was considerable overlapping between them also. There was certainly not, islets with definite borders and demarcation. Now, in his article, Forms of Production and Forces of Change in Ancient Tamil Society, which came up in studies in history a couple of years back, Gurukul has worked out the dynamics of economy in each of these overlapping regions at length. So, in his opinion, people of, say, Mullai Marudam practiced agriculture, spinning and weaving, while the Nethal Marudam folks, along with agriculture, would take to, say, pot making. Metallurgy was also known to them in these overlapping zones. Moreover, the undulating Western Ghats, for instance, was so thickly a region that it would have become very difficult to distinguish Kurinji from Mullai in these regions. So, Kurinji is the highland region and Western Ghat is a highland region. Mullai is a forested region. So, how can you state that this is clearly a Mullai and clearly a Kurinji region? So, this kind of overlap is bound to happen. So these overlapping regions, Gurukul argues, had their own mix of economic practices that we've just mentioned about, and these could include agriculture, which would definitely be one of the most important, along with, say, metallurgy, craft, pot making, etc. So friends, amongst all the economic activities that we are talking about, I think all of you know about the fact that agriculture would be the most important. It is the activity that is going to generate maximum resources. There's no doubt about it. And in agriculture, when we talk about in the Sangam, in the post-Sangam period, it is paddy. Paddy was the most important staple crop. This is important not only for immediate consumption, but also has its use in domestic trade. Other crops grown included sugar cane, millet, pepper. Pepper, let's not forget, it's one of the most important crops which would have its exchange value. Then there are various pulses, coconuts, beans, cotton, tamarind. Tamarind, you know, is imli in Hindi. And sandalwood, which is very, very important, a product of the region. Now, what were the basic tools used in agriculture? We get some information from the texts around the period. This included the plough, which was known as Melli, Nanchil, and Kolapai. Kolu was the ploughshare, and the reference to a Kolu dealer comes from the Tamil Brahmi inscription of Mangulam. We also would like to know about the issues of ownership. Who owned the land? Well, we know that there are farmers who are cultivating the plots of land, and they are known as Mallars, they're known as Velalars, Karalars, Kalamars. We have different names for them. So the sense is that they are owning even a small plot of land, they're cultivating it. And then if they're cultivating, then there must have been some mechanism by which their surplus is being siphoned off. In other words, I am talking about the beginning of taxation system also, but was it so stringent and clear at this time? We'll take this up when I come to that part of our lecture. Now, provision of water facilities was of utmost importance, as can be made out by the role the chieftaincies and the monarchs played in making water facilities available to the people. Now, a water reservoir, and this I'm coming to the archaeological sources here. There was a water reservoir in Kaveri Pattanam that had been found a mile away from the sea, that is Bay of Bengal, in a locality called Vanagiri. It was made of an earthen bun with a facade built of bricks. The time that we attribute to it is somewhat around the 1st or the 2nd century CE. This structure actually closely resembled a similar brick structure that we find at Nagarjunakonda, which is once again used for the purpose of irrigation. Arikamedu also gives us clues to the construction of water reservoirs. So friends, water reservoirs are very, very essential in this part of the of South India. We are familiar with the fact that the rivers in South India are not perennial rivers, unlike Ganges and Brahmaputra and Yamuna. So there was a need to ensure that enough water is there in supply if the rainfall does not occur. I would also like to add here the observations made by the Chinese traveler Wenzhang. Wenzhang, in his work CEC-UGC, made perceptive observation of the Sangam society about the agriculture that we are talking about. But friends, remember when Wenzhang is writing, he is somebody who comes in the 7th century. So he is talking about the post-Sangam society and whatever he knew about the Sangam from the folk tale around. So I'm just quoting a little from there. Quote, "The soil is fertile and regularly cultivated and produces abundant grain. There are also many flowers and fruits. The area produces precious gems and other articles. The climate is hot. The character of the people is courageous," unquote. He also further says that the people are deeply attached to the principles of honesty and truth. So that's giving us an idea into the mindset of the people also. They highly esteem learning in respect of their language and written characters. Yet another evidence that literacy was well known out there, or at least the whole thing of art of writing was known to the people. He further adds that they seem to differ but little from those in mid-India, which is interesting. Now, Wenzhang, friends, we know was a Chinese traveler who visited practically the entire subcontinent, northwest, west, towards the east. Deccan area and in South India also. And so he was in a position to make a very pertinent comparison amongst folks inhabiting these distinct areas. Let's now come to commercial activity. In terms of commercial activity, friends, what is very evident is that people of Tamil Nadu were seafaring people. We have ample evidence for Indo-Roman trade from both the Coromandel side of the peninsula and the Malabar side of it. In the context of South Asian trade, we know that Indian merchants acted as middlemen for Southeast Asia on one side and Mediterranean world on the other side. The trade between South India and Southeast Asia can be dated around the end of the 1st century BCE, and what we know is that middlemen used to obtain spices, for which Southeast Asia is very well known, and other commodities, and then they exported it to the Roman Empire. No wonder Southeast Asia is referred to as Swarna Bhumi or Swarna Dweep, or the land of gold in ancient literature. So next, we should also know where these activities actually took place, and those are the port areas. Sangam works like Ahana Nuru and Karun Togai mention many famous coastal as well as inland centers of this particular historical period. Srila Paddakaram refers to Kanyakumari, Cape Comorin, which was a very major port. The Periplus also identifies ports of Komarai, so possibly this is Kanyakumari, Kolchi, Korkai, that is Korkai, Kamara, which we understand as Kaveri Pattanam, and Puduke, which is in all possibility a reference to Arikamedu. Now, Korkai was an important port and which was famous for its pearl and conch fishery. Friends, I'm going to refer to this a couple of times in my lecture. Just remember that. This particular area, that is, we're talking of Pandyan area, which was known for its pearl fishery and pearl exports. Now, Srila Paddakaran describes sailors coming to Kaveri Pattanam, which is also Puhar or Pumpuhar region today, from different parts of Indian subcontinent and other countries as well. Ptolemy mentions Khabaris Emporium at the mouth of Khabaros, that is the river Kaveri, which is identified as Kaveri Pattanam. Several inland trade centers were also known at that time, and these were areas of trading, these were areas sometimes of manufacturing as well, and these included Urayur, which happened to be one of the capitals of the Sangam Cholas under Sangam period. Kanchipuram was another significant hinterland which served the port of Arikamedu. Another port that is mentioned is Perimura or Perimuda. This has been tentatively identified as located in the mouth of Vagai near Rameshwaram. Excavations here revealed Roman pottery and coins, but more interestingly, local pottery also made in the Roman style. This pottery also in coins made in the Roman style, but they are actually Indian in their manufacturing. Let's take a look at the map. This particular map gives us an idea of the kind of port towns that existed. You can see that you have Kaveri Pattanam here, you can look at Korkai, there is Comorin, that is at the tip of the peninsula. The other two were more on the side of Coromandel coast. Now in the Malabar, we can see Muziris or Muchiri as it is called in context of India, Tondi. So there are a number of ports that were there, and these ports were well frequented, from where we get good archaeological evidence as well as reference in the text also. Now comes the issue of trade routes. The trade routes taken by the ships from, say, Rome to Tamilakam has been described in detail by the writers such as Strabo and Pliny the Elder. Roman and Arab sailors were aware of the existence of monsoon winds that blew across the Indian Ocean on a seasonal basis. We also have a reference to a Roman captain. His name is Hippalus. He was probably the first to sail a direct route from Rome to India using the monsoon winds. Let me also describe some interesting observations that we have come across in reading of our texts, Indian and outside. Pliny writes that if the monsoon winds blowing regularly, they blew regularly without any disruption, it would take only 40 days to reach Muziris from Osilis, that is located at the entrance of the Red Sea from the south. He writes that the passengers preferred to embark at Bakere, which is Vaikara, in Pandya's country rather than Muziris, which was infested with pirates. A few Chera rulers have been credited with the naval warfare to punish pirates. It was that flourishing a center that you have pirates also coming here. What were the import and export items? Now, fine muslin and jewels, especially pearls, were exported from Tamilakam for personal use, obviously, and by the elite. Even greater was the demand for pepper, which, according to Pliny, was sold at a price of 15 denaril. Denaril is a silver piece, and the denaril a pound. But there were other items also, like sapphire, which is called kurandam in Tamil, and a variety of ruby were also exported. Pandyan region was anyway known for the production of pearls and rubies, as can be testified from Kannagi historian Shilapadakaram, which I have referred to in my earlier presentation. The other articles exported from Tamilakam were ivory, beetle, diamond, amethyst, and tortoise shells. Glass beads also. Again, an interesting trivia: the Greek and Arabic names for rice, that is urz, ginger, gingibar, and cinnamon, Quarfa, are almost identical with their Tamil names, Arisi, Inchivar, and Kuruva. Items of import actually would include luxury items such as glass, gold, and wine. We also know that horses were imported from Arabia. Coming to the last part of this particular section, that is manufacturing activities. Well, weaving, shipbuilding, metalworking, carpentry, rope making, ornament making, making of ivory products, tanning, etc. were some of the items that were being manufactured here. In fact, Indian beads, the glass beads and quartz beads were objects of demand. Archaeological excavation at Bondon Ta Faith in Thailand, the site in Thailand, have yielded more than 3,000 beads of glass, crystal, agate, and carnelian. This suggests that carnelian beads were probably imported from Indian subcontinent. Glass beads reached China from Tamil Nadu via Mantai in Sri Lanka. Arikamedu, Karkaidu, and Kodumanal were famous bead making centers. Friends, look at this picture. These are the beads that we have been able to recover from Arikamedu. The next picture shows glass beads from of early Tamilakam period, and we are sure that some of these at least reached eventually to Thailand as well as to China. In terms of ceramic arts, we get abundant evidence of pottery of the period, the black and red pottery done by the inverted firing technique with hard and shining surface, roulette ware, all that has been found. Metal artifacts included bronze bowls with a central knob, which have been excavated from the cemetery site. Just take a quick look at the picture. This is the red and black pottery from the Sangam period. This is the roulette ware. In fact, I have also referred to it in my last lecture. And just the last bit before I wind up this particular section, the poetic references to Yavana. Sangam literature, Sangam poems talk about Yavanas. They are the outsiders bringing goods by ship and ports of South India. A poem on Pattu Pattu compares the noise made by the weavers of Madurai to that of the workers who loaded and unloaded merchandise into Yavan ships at midnight. A poem by Narika refers to the Pandya king Narimaran drinking perfumed and cold wine brought by the Yavanas. What was the impact of it? Well, it is possible that the impact of the trade, particularly maritime trade, led to the intensification of inter-Tennai exchange. This, in turn, could have provided an incentive for extracting surplus. And Kuranji Tennai area was specially known for this. We could get aromatic wood from there. So we can really see a new kind of symbiotic relationship developing between, say, Maradam, Nayathal, Kurinji and other regions, and that gives us a good peep into what kind of economic activities happened. I'll end this part of our presentation with this. I'll take up political and other factors in the next half. Thank you.